Hey everybody, I'm Verano. This is my first video, so I figured I'd introduce myself a little bit. So I am from New York City. I live in Atlanta, Georgia now. I've been to a couple places in between, but that's where I call home. I know saying where I live in the first 40 seconds is not the greatest thing in the world, but we're all here to have fun. So, why am I creating these videos, this content? So, there's a lot of information that I feel like people don't have when it comes to things like a presidential election that's coming up. And, I am somebody that just completely doesn't understand how anyone, for any reason, could vote for someone like Donald Trump. That party in particular, but especially this dickhead. So, my question is, why are there so many people that think that's okay? And I was talking to my wife about this, and I said, but everything that anyone says as a valid reason is easily debunked or disproven or, clarified in 10 seconds of Googling. And she says to me, well, uh, you have like a master's degree and you know how to Google these things. You know what to Google. A lot of people don't have that. So I think what I'm trying to do here is give back a little bit and maybe give some information to people that might not have known or wouldn't have even know where to begin looking for this information. And I promise this is not some sort of like condescending power trip or anything. This is just, me who has tried to canvas for a couple weeks and is having panic attacks and getting spit at and want to provide some value as we close in on this final week before the campaign. So I think a big one to start with, and we'll start with the economy. Now, that is something that if you look at polling, people say that they are less convinced that a Democrat would be able to handle the economy like a Republican. Donald Trump was a businessman, one that, bankrupted a casino somehow. But all right, fine, he's got that. He said that unemployment was so low when he was president, how there was no inflation. So these are, points that seem very much in the favor of the other side. So, some possible reason why somebody would vote for them. And but let's get deeper into that. So I think the biggest thing that people see is that their checkbook is hurting, their wallet is hurting because of inflation. I use air quotes not because I don't think it's real. Of course, it's real. I have a business degree and I know that this is a real thing. But what I'm going to say is there's a there's a problem where we, as Americans, and it's possible that other countries, as I'm speaking as an American myself, um, don't realize that we as a country, especially the country that the size of we are and the influence they have, do not live in a vacuum. We are indeed on planet Earth, and in 2024, it's a very globally connected world, not just because of the internet, but shipping is much faster. There are more efficient canals to send things through, and countries trade, and they trade all sorts of goods and services back and forth. So the entire global economy, in many ways, is very, very connected. There are some outliers where petroleum countries often have much better economic outlooks just because they're sitting on literal, money. It's coming out their wazoo. So those tend to have a little bit different of a scenario when it comes to the global economy. But for the most part, we're all in this together. Even though we don't think we are, we only think about our American experience. We are certainly not alone on this planet. And why I bring this up and why this is important is because this was far from a U.S. problem. The inflation was a global problem. Globally, inflation was one of the worst, if not the worst, inflation periods in modern history. In history, perhaps, because we didn't factor in these things prior to modern history. But why does this matter? So, something that I looked at is we talk about how the Biden administration, Kamala, being part of that by, being the vice president and what she plans to do as president. And if you look at what their percentages were in terms of inflation, I could be unfair and count 2021 to Donald Trump and also take 2017 away from him, and as credit to Obama, and that year in is when their economy starts, being the majority of policy. But I'm not even going to do that. I'm going to be fair to Donald Trump twice because first, I'm giving him credit for 2017, and two, for not absorbing 2021, which was the worst of the inflation years. So, what does this mean? Well, when you look at the ratio of U.S. inflation to global inflation, that ratio for both Trump and Biden administration, by proxy Kamala here, is a difference of 0.03%. There is a 0.03%, so less than 3/100ths difference between that ratio. Now, not only are they basically tied in fighting inflation compared globally, Donald Trump did not have the worst global inflation in history fighting against him, which Biden and Kamala most certainly did. So having their ratio be identical, practically statistically identical, while one of those parties was facing a global disaster of a inflation period, I mean, that's just proof positive about how much stronger they are as a team, as the Dem side is in crafting economic policy that works and doesn't destroy our pricing system and how we're able to afford everyday things or even extravagant things we should all treat ourselves occasionally. So they did as good of a job as was possible. This 200 countries roughly on this planet, the U.S. did better than 75% of them in terms of inflation. And I'm also including in the 25% better than a lot of those oil countries in the Middle East that have their own, gold mines, literally. And it's also including countries like China, Russia, Iran, North Korea that are most likely lying about all that information, but we'll give them the credit for what they say. Even doing that, the United States is better than three quarters of all the planet, other countries on this planet. Now, what we can say is, if your main concern is inflation, then that should be alleviated, because in this case, the Biden-Kamala administration certainly exceeded the expectation, even the precedent set by the previous president during a non-inflation period. So there's that. Second is there's a lot of talk about taxes and how that is going to affect things. Now, I don't think that I need to be explaining a whole lot when it comes to taxes for middle class are to be cut under Kamala's plan, and only people making more than $400,000 a year are in a bracket that's going to have any additional tax levied upon them. So 400,000, the median household income in this country is about 100,000. I think it's like in the 90s. for household. So that's not even individual, that's household. And that means 50% of all people have less than 100,000, let alone 400,000. So we're talking about a few percentage of the folks in this country are going to have to pay a little bit more. Everyone else will pay a little bit less. There's also something that I like to talk about that um, is related to this is we have our checkbook, right? We balance our checkbook, and at the end of the day, where do we stand? Expenditures versus collections, and with that, we see what we have left at the bottom line. Now, if you are so focused on what that W-2 says, that W-4, if that's what your concern is, then you should have no concern. And even if there was some concern for you, we have to look at how life works. And it's not just about that tax form, it's about how much money you have in the bank at the end of the day. So if you pay an extra $50 in taxes, okay, then yeah, your taxes went up. That sounds like it sucks, right? But your cost of living and the services provided to you and what you have available is worth more than that $50. So in the end, you are actually spending less because you can have that $50 back, but all of the things that you just got because you paid that extra $50 add up to way more than $50. So, one, you don't have to worry about taxes because it's not happening to you. And two, even if it was happening to you, it's fine because at the end of the day, you're going to have more money in your pocket. It is not such just about the tax form and why we are so focused on that. That specifically, when there's so much else going on economically for every person, it's just like that should be hammered home immediately. So those were two big points on the economy. When it comes to unemployment, I'll be fair. A lot of what the Biden administration claims about unemployment is a lot of the workforce coming back from COVID layoffs. So it was, I don't want to say disingenuous because the numbers are what the numbers are, but I won't give that as a credit. I don't care about that. And in fact, unemployment rate is not the greatest judge because that one doesn't indicate if everyone's surviving on one job or needs multiple. It's just saying who is working any at all. And then two, there are times when we need to look forward into the future, and who is not employed could have very little bearing on where we go. But that's another conversation about the automation of humans. But with that being said, that's going down another road. So all economic signs say at best for the Trump administration a wash, and at worst did they did not exceed the ratio of U.S. inflation to global inflation when they weren't fighting the worst global inflation of all time. Like they weren't fighting that, and they got the same number as the people that were fighting that. So if the people that were fighting that didn't have to fight that, they would have crushed them. Not even close. Taxes, we talked about. Nobody's taxes are being raised unless you make over $400,000 a year, which as an individual, and in the 90 percentile of people do not make that. So the likelihood that that affects you is slim. With that being said, even if it does affect you, or it did affect people below that 400,000 line, at the end of the day, we have to look at how much is left in our bank accounts. And when that extra $50 might go to advancing Medicare and Medicaid, or having better books and resources in schools, or having more EMTs and more firefighters, more law enforcement officials. You have all of this. You can have training for them, so we don't have incidents, and the like. You spend that $50 extra on your W two, and you get so much more value out of it than it just sitting in your bank account, and then you have to pay for all these things, going to the doctor, paying higher rates at the doctor, going to the grocery store, buying gas, having just some entertainment for yourself. When you add up all those things, sure, some of them overlap, but you're going to be saving, even if the tax form says you spent a little extra. So let's try not to focus so much on the tax form. And then, third, with the end of it is, like I said, there's no fucking reason to vote for these people, economic and otherwise. And I'll make a couple more videos going over some other topics, but for real, like, this is absurd. Every economic argument just falls by the wayside when you actually look at what is happening in the numbers, what the performance was across multiple different factors of the economic spectrum for the country. So with economics already gone, they're not they don't have much to rest on as why they should be elected. But there's a few other things: foreign policy, social policy, things like that. And I'll make a couple more videos going over those. So thank you for taking the time, listen to me rant for a few minutes. Like the video if you enjoyed my rambling for 15 minutes, and certainly subscribe. I'm gonna have some videos coming out over the next few days leading up to the election, and then probably a couple, maybe a live stream that day to talk about what is going on, because it'll be absolutely fucking nuts. But definitely leave a comment if you have anything that you want to discuss or think that is relevant to why the other side is worthy of a vote. Happy to entertain those questions as well. So speak soon, and let's hope Kamala wins.